Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Time Between Times Storytelling with me, Owen Staton. What a week it has been. Calan Gaea of Halloween has been and gone again, that darkest of all nights, where spirits walk the land, where the night is sundered with story. But we will not be sad. We will go into the dark of the year knowing that we are full of joy. I was lucky enough to spend my Halloween on stage with the band Stornoway in Cardiff. A huge crowd listening to tales traditionally told at the time between times. It filled my heart with joy, and if you are here because of that gig, I thank you and bid you welcome to the fire pit at the heart of the forest. You see, winter is coming, and the dark, the time where the indoors becomes your fire pit, where to even look out of the window and witness that dark makes your heart run cold. But of course, this is the time of imagination. This is the time where we can look out and wonder what was going on beyond our door. This truly is the time between times. So sit back, my friends, relax, close your eyes if it's safe to do so, and join me on another journey to an old tale that happened far away and long ago. Because you see, even though the nights get dark here, compared to those ancient times, it must be as light as midsummer, for in those lightless nights, the dark truly was a place of story. One of the biggest fears that people had was what wandered in that dark, what walked the night when they were tucked up in bed. So sit back and let me tell you one such tale that happened long ago. But first, let us get to the fire pit. On nights like this, where a storm is brewing outside, it feels hard to go there. But these are the nights we must resist the urge to stay. This is the night where we must urge ourselves out to join the tales. So put on your coat, zip up that zip, put on your gloves and your woolly hat, and take that step outside your door. Lock it behind you, for that is your place of safety, and make your wandering way down the path till you come to your front gate. Now you are at the road. There is a storm brewing, and the fog has come down like a shroud. You turn right and head to the forest, for you know that path that leads inside. You step on it and feel the leaves crunch under your feet as you make your meandering way into the woods, past that old mossy tower, over the stream, and there you come across it. The fire pit at the heart of the forest. You can hear the pitter-patter of rain on the remaining leaves that are in the branches. But not here. For this place is wondrous and dry and warm. The heat of the fire greets your hands and your feet and your face, and your heart is filled with warmth as you see who has gathered here. Friends, those who are long gone and those who you have yet to meet are here and greet you with happiness. There is food, there is drink, there is company, and most of all, there are stories. Welcome to the time between times, the time when it's neither night nor day, but the sun has gone and the sky is grey, the time when the veil between our world and the fairy world grows wafer thin, so thin that for a few moments, and just a few moments, we can reach into their realm, and for a few moments they can reach into ours. You see, now is the time that people see lights in the sky. Now is the time that people see the Tylwyth Teg flitting from tree to tree. Now is the time that people see ghosts. Now is the time between times. And far away, long ago, on the night of the 8th of February, 1855, in a small cottage just outside the village of Totnes in Devon, a young man called Matthew Pierce was asleep in bed. The snow had started to fall the evening before, and that filled him with joy. The weeks before had been wet and damp and colourless. But as those white flakes started to drop from the sky, he felt a happiness, like as if his world was now filled with colour. For this was good winter, and although he lived outside the town, and it would be hard to make it out into the market, he knew that tomorrow would bring an adventure. He lived alone, but for his horse Brutus, who was outside in a stable. He made sure he was warm and fed him well, stoked his fire, made sure all was safe and all was locked, took one last look out of the window and saw that the black night was lit up with white as the snow was starting to settle. There was a slight breeze, and the trees waved back and forth. Far away to the south he could see the sea, choppy. But the snowflakes that fell there just vanished into its watery might. But around the fields of his house, a magical scene was starting to form. He tucked himself up in his blankets, his head upon his pillow, and soon what was cold started to become warm, as he started to feel the hand of sleep upon him. But it's then that he started to hear it. The wooden roof of his house started to creak. 1, 2, 3, 4. He looked up, and out of the candle-lit darkness he could see that the wood of the roof was starting to move slightly, as if something was placing great weight upon the roof itself. Something was walking on the top of his house. First he thought it was the snow, but it had a rhythmic pattern. It crossed from one side of the house to the other. He lay there terrified, for what surely could get there? His bed was next to the wall, and then he heard whatever it was leap from the top of the house and land in the snow near his window. So terrified was he that he dared not look outside, until after a few moments the footsteps seemed to have stopped. He lay there, his heart beating in his chest for what felt like hours. But soon the dawn started to rise. He could feel and smell the snow in the air, and it's almost like those fears of the night before started to vanish as he sat up, put on his warmest clothes, and opened his front door. It was then that he remembered the noises. So he took a look upon the roof of his house. It was covered with snow. The land was covered with snow. It looked like a Christmas card come alive. So beautiful it almost took his breath away. But then he saw something that was truly different. On the roof of his house there were what seemed to be footprints. He walked around to the other side and looked up. And yes, there were footprints. He turned around and could see that they led to his farm and from his farm, as if whatever it was had walked over his very house. He took a closer look at the footprints, and it was then that his blood started to run cold. But these were not booted prints or even those of human feet, but these were hoof prints, about the size of a donkey's hoof, smaller than a great horse, but bigger than some small animal. They walked across the yard to his house, stopped, walked along the roof, and then down on the other side, and then off into the distance, towards the distant town of Exeter. Confused, Matthew looked around. Then he went to the stable and saw that Brutus was there. The horse seemed skittish, as if something had unnerved it, and he put it down to the snow, but then saw that the footprints had come very near to where the horse was stabled. Although he was scared, Matthew was filled with adventure, like as if the darkness held no fears. He saddled Brutus and fed him, and then said, "My friend, let us follow these tracks and see where they go." He got on to Brutus's back, and in the cold, crisp February morning rode out. The footsteps went on and on and on, over hill and through the woods, there on road, there on field. They carried on, one after the other, hoofed prints leading through the snow. Wherever he went, people were gathered and watching them, looking at them, inspecting them. Terrified so they were. Outside of Exeter, after what seemed like a long journey, just as the sun was almost setting at the end of the day, he came across a church, and there in the snow the footprints went to the wall of the church, and again on the other side carried on walking. The people were bemused. Some started to say that some evil must have walked that night, that the snow did not just bring the cold, but the coldest-hearted, as some evil beast had stalked Devon that day. As he walked past an inn, the innkeeper called to him and asked him where he had come from and where he was going, and he simply answered, "I am following the prints." "What do you mean, the devil's footprints?" called the innkeeper. "Is that what they are?" asked Matthew. "Aye, that's what they say they are." It was then that he felt fear. He was now far from home. The sun was starting to set, the moon was starting to rise, the time between times was here, and he knew that the veil between our world and the fairy world was now wafer thin. He decided to turn his horse. He spoke to more travellers that said that the tracks went for 100 miles or more, all around Devon itself. And there was talk of people seeing someone who made the tracks, walking through the night. Matthew rode as quickly as he could, but soon the night started to encroach upon him, and he came across an old ruined cabin. The door was big enough to bring Brutus inside, and he himself went inside, and there in the corner of the room he made his bed, lit a fire. In the dead of that night, as both he and the horse slept, it came again, walking around the cabin, walking around the ruined cottage, step after step. It was like each step was burned into the snow. Matthew did not sleep a wink, for at one point he felt like there was a creature breathing heavily just outside the wall beyond his head. The next day he rose with the dawn and saw the footprints were still there, though fainter this time. And he rode back to Totnes, glad to see his house once more. The night after, the snow started to melt. The sun was starting to burn it. That Christmas landscape was starting to disappear. But he stayed up late and looked outside. The clouds had cleared, the moon was high. And there, on a small hill not far from his house, he saw a figure staring down at his enclosure. a figure that can only be described as something out of a nightmare. Horned head, cloven feet, and walking with the aid of a staff. This creature took one look at his house and then walked off into the darkness. And that, my friends, is the tale of the devil's footprints, something that has confounded supernatural experts, folklorists, for almost 200 years. How on that night of all nights, as the snow fell thickly on the Devon floor, it seemed that something truly horrible walked the nights around Totnes, Exeter. The night the river Exe did freeze, the devil walked and caused unease. There have been many theories of what could have caused this, but I like to believe the story. You know what they say, when legend becomes truth, print the legend. I thank you, my friends, for joining me here at the heart of the forest for another tale traditionally told. Please, if you enjoy my stories, I release a story every week, as you know. And you can follow me on Ko-fi.com, where any contributions will be more than welcome. As the nights grow dark and cold, it's nice to snuggle up with a coffee. Or join me on Patreon, patreon.com/Owen Staton 7, and join my growing band of Patreons. I also did a video for the Modern Fairies Sightings podcast only last week. Joe is a great friend of mine, and the video, along with Bethan and Elsa from Erie, Essex even, has proven to be quite a hit. Check that out if you want to. Please review the show and say something nice, or just tell a friend about it. It would be great to see our numbers grow again. But in the meantime, do not be afraid of the dark. Those that wander it are not lost, but are merely characters in a story we have yet to create. Diolch yn fawr am gwrando. Thank you ever so much for listening. Nos da.